Hello, and today we'll be fixing a Samsung Galaxy S10 Plus. First thing you want to do, get some playing cards, and a thin tool, and a Phillips head screwdriver, a small one. First thing we're going to do is we're going to take the thin tool and put it between the frame and the edge of the glass. Then what I like to do is add a little bit of pressure. Mine is already broken over here, the back glass, so I'm not worrying about it too much if it shatters, but I'm still going to show you how to take it off the best way. What you want to do prior to doing this is put it under a heat plate. What I'm going to do is I'm taking my playing card and running it around the edges of the screen. Like so. All right. Now that we have the back glass separated, what we're going to do is we're going to take the Phillips head screws out. If I'm not mistaken, these ones are all the same size screws. I'm just going to skip forward and take all the screws out. I'll get right back. Alright, now you've taken out all 16 screws. What we're then going to do is gently peel back on the wireless charger coil. This is separate it from that section right over here. Then we're going to lift that up, set it right aside. And then the second one as well. Now we have the actual board itself. Unlike in previous models in which the screw for the headphone jack was actually part, like a separate screw that goes in, this one's actually part of the frame, which is an interesting design. Price saves on like one screw. There's two screws right over here, and another one up the top. So just make sure to be careful when you're removing all screws. Keep them all organized, that way you don't damage any of your components. Before you start removing anything, what you want to do is take a small pair of tweezers, or alternatively a SIM card popping tool, whichever one you prefer. Pop out the SIM card tray to avoid damaging the board. Then you want to disconnect the battery. Always disconnect the battery first with your repairs. Then proceed to disconnect the rest of the ribbon cables. Also, make sure to not touch any of the cameras. You don't want to mess those up. Alright, now that I got those two undone, I'm going to take out the 3 screws that are actually on the board. Actually, they're fairly tight, which is surprising. Usually they come out with little resistance. Oh, don't forget to take that out. I like to put a screwdriver into there. Just pry up gently. Set that aside. Now your motherboard should release easily. There does appear to be a pretty solid gasket on the bottom, right by the charging port. Alright, next up, what you want to do after you've taken your motherboard out is go ahead and place this on the heat plate to transfer the components over. This screen that we actually got in looks like it actually has all those components already pre-installed, so I don't have to do that. But what we'll show you how to do is you want to remove like those gaskets and things like that. But it appears that the proximity sensor, which used to be a modular component, is now no longer a modular component. They made several design choices in the S10 Plus that makes it kind of different from the previous models, some of which I don't like, some of which I do like. Proximity sensor is no longer a replaceable component, as well as the charging port. Those are two things I don't really like about the design of this particular phone. However, it is a very powerful and well-designed device other than that. But I would like to see if them revert back to the previous iterations of how they designed these devices. Alright, next thing you want to do is take the battery out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it on the heat plate, let it loosen up the adhesive just a bit. We don't want to overheat it, so we're not doing anything like above 86 degrees Celsius. Anything higher than that, you risk damaging the LCD, you risk damaging the battery and the components. So I'll get right back to you once you do that. Alright, now that we have it heated up, what we're going to do is we're going to take this thin tool, pry tool thing. It's plastic, not metal. Do not use a metal pry tool. We're going to gently ease up on the bottom of the battery. If it doesn't come loose right away, what we're going to do is you're just going to slap it on the heat plate for longer. That's the sound of the adhesive lifting up. Okay, now it's released. That's all the components you need to transfer over with this particular one. If your LCD does not, your LCD assembly, should I say, does not include the battery, you will have to transfer it over, as well as the vibration motor and the earpiece. And hopefully you got the one with the small parts on the side, because changing these buttons on the side is kind of a pain. Next thing we're going to do, we're actually going to put the motherboard back in place. The new LCD. Here's what it looked like beforehand. It's not looking very pretty. Enough to make a grown man cry. Sad, sad repair tears. Alright, now if you forgot where these screws went for the actual board itself, a good way to remember is that they actually have a metal circular, like, looks like those things are strengthened a hole punch almost. Kind of like a gasket around it. And that's where you can actually screw them in. Make sure not to touch any of your camera components. Or wear gloves if you're clumsy. It's honestly suggested you wear gloves and wear anti-grounding, but of all the phones I've repaired, I've never really had any issues with grounding issues. But yet again, it's extremely different if you're doing things like micro soldering and such. And I would recommend always wearing gloves. Repairability wise, I would say this phone's pretty easy to fix. I mean, if you have the right parts. Now, before I put everything together, I'm just going to test out the screen real quick. I always click the batteries in to the socket first, and then I lower it down. That way I know that once it's adhered down, I won't have to readjust the battery. Because it's already clicked in, you don't have to worry about that. Alright, next thing we're going to do is put the back plates back on. And after that, then we're going to proceed to put the back glass back on and the SIM card tray. I apologize if I don't sound as exuberant as I usually do, but I have a cold, so. I like filming things in real time because I feel like it gives people a better understanding of how long it actually does take to fix a device. Which I find super helpful. Now I'm going to put these screws back in. I'm just going to skip ahead after I get the screws in. You don't get to see me screwing 15 screws. Alright, now that I have the screws back in, the last and final step is to readhere the back glass of the S10 Plus. This particular instance, we're not going to be putting a new one on. However, what I am going to be doing is affixing some double-sided tape and readhering it. You guys have seen me do that in other videos. Basically what you want to do is just put it along the edges and then reseal it up. And that concludes how to fix a Galaxy S10 Plus screen repair. Thank you.